Hi, everyone. Today we're here to talk about the Economic Development Administration's Build to Scale program, particularly for fiscal year 2023. During today's webinar, we're going to discuss a little bit about the history of the program, some background on the Build to Scale program overview, including the two different challenges, and walk through an in-depth look at how to apply. The Build to Scale program was authorized under the Stevenson-Wilder Technology Act of 1980. So under Section 27, this gives us our overarching program goals that we try to achieve, which include supporting planning and technical assistance of regional innovation initiatives to improve connectedness and strategic orientation of the Regional Innovation Initiative, increase availability and investment of private and philanthropic financing, and facilitate commercialization of products and processes, technology transfer, and entrepreneurial activities. So these are the goals we're trying to meet under the Build to Scale program design. For those who may not know, Build to Scale has been around for the past 9 years, since 2014. We're very, very excited to say in 2023 that this will be our 10th time running this competition. And this year we've been appropriated $50 million for the program, which is the most we've ever had appropriated. So we're very excited for this year's competition. A little bit more about the history of the program. So over the last 9 years, we've been able to fund 378 individual projects under the Build to Scale program, which is over $221 million of EDA investment. We've seen over $250 million, $54 million of local match provided, and created over 58,000 jobs estimated. Since 2020 alone, the Build to Scale program has seen over 240 investment deals for startup participants and $262 million in private investment, which has led to over 270 obtained and pending patents, trademarks, and copyrights. So we're excited to see what the next cohort of applicants will produce as well and continue to build on this. When we think about what goes into building a healthy entrepreneurial ecosystem, there's a number of things. This is a simplified view of that. But with Build to Scale, we like to think of it as the intersection of business support and innovation engines. We want to continue to support regional innovation economies, but also still support businesses where they are. Again, thinking about the entrepreneurial ecosystem, there's a lot of players involved. When we think about who is a good fit for the Build to Scale program, we tend to think about the entrepreneurial support organizations. These are the intermediary organizations providing direct services to entrepreneurs and scalable tech-based startup companies. This program does not allow funding to go directly to entrepreneurs or to the startup companies. So we're really looking at those intermediaries who are going to provide the programming to support them. Technically speaking, we do have more strict parameters on eligibility requirements than that last slide may have depicted. Which includes we have public and non-public entities. On the public entity side, eligible entities include states or cities, Indian tribes, or other political subdivisions of a state. So think municipalities, counties, etc. On the non-public entity side, we have nonprofit organizations, institutions of higher education, which can include community colleges, universities, public or private, etc. Public-private partnerships. If you are or interested in becoming a public-private partnership, I highly, highly encourage you to read the footnotes in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, aka the NOFO, because it will explain in detail what is required to be considered a public-private partnership under this grant. Also open to science or research parks, federal laboratories, venture development organizations, or economic development organizations or a similar entity that is focused, primarily on improving science, technology, innovation, or entrepreneurship. I will note here briefly, and I'll talk about it later, that public and non-public entities do have different application requirements. Please read the NOFO at the appendices. There is a checklist, one for public entities and one for non-public entities, of what goes into your application specifically. So make sure you know which category your entity falls under. Separately, if you'd like to apply as a consortia of any of these listed entities, that is allowed. You can apply as a consortia as well. No matter if you are a public or non-public entity, this program does require a 50% match requirement. So that means every dollar of EDA investment you request, that you must also provide a $1 match requirement as well. What are the program goals? So the program goals for Build to Scale, we talked about the Stevenson-Wilder Act and the overarching goals. So more specifically, what is Build to Scale trying to achieve? We are trying to build capacity for innovators to invent, improve, and bring to market new products and services. We're looking to expand regional knowledge ecosystems and realize economic and job growth. We are looking for programs that will accelerate regional economies, focused on industries of the future. Of course, looking to catalyze regional leadership through technology-based economic development, also known as TBED strategies, empowering communities to provide proof of concept and commercialization assistance, and of course, equitably and inclusively increase access to capital for technology-enabled entrepreneurs. So for 2023, as I noted, we have $50 million of funding. How are we going to break that down? Well, we have two separate challenges, the Venture Challenge and the Capital Challenge. I'm going to talk more about each of these individually shortly, but wanted to start with this graphic to kind of show how it works. The Build to Scale program is inclusive of the two different challenges, and under each challenge, there are various funding levels. We're really trying to help meet communities where they are. You don't have to be super mature of a community or super advanced in TBED to apply for a Build to Scale program. So we want to make sure that there's different funding levels available to help address and meet communities where they are and address what their needs are today. We're going to start with the Venture Challenge. So the Venture Challenge is really a programmatic grant ready for implementation for communities that are ready to implement and designed to provide entrepreneurial support organizations funding to accelerate scalable startup companies. What does that look like? So as I've noted, we have 9 years of programs. You can check our website to learn more and see past descriptions of some of our different grantees in the past. But what we've tended to see in our past grantees is we've seen a lot of models that support technology incubation or accelerator models. We've seen coaching. We've seen technology transfer and commercialization programming. And of course, programming that catalyzes regional technology-based economic development, aka TBED strategies as well. So under the Venture Challenge, we have 3 funding tiers. I'm going to skip Ignite for a minute since it's new to fiscal year 2023. So we'll talk about that one separately. And I'm going to skip down to Build and Scale, which you might be a little bit more familiar with. Under the Build level, we're really looking for applicants who are going to be piloting a new model or implementing a proven solution. You can request up to $750,000 over a federal share over a 3-year period of performance. I should note you do not have to request the maximum. You can definitely request less than that to be considered a Build tier as well. Under the Scale, it's exactly what it sounds like. We're looking for programs that might be a little bit more mature. They have or know of a proven program model that they're really looking to scale and build off of. Scale applicants should request between $750,000 and $2 million in federal share, and again, has a 3-year period of performance. Now let's talk about Ignite. So Ignite is a new funding level, new for 2023. Under the Ignite funding level, which is part of the Venture Challenge, you can request up to $300,000 of federal share. This does have a shorter period of performance. This is really excuse the pun, but ready to spark your T-bed strategies regionally. So it has a shorter period of performance of 18 to 24 months, so up to 2 years on this one. And it's really designed to focus on nascent T-bed communities, so communities that may be newer to, don't have a fully comprehensive, mature T-bed strategy yet. For those communities that are really looking to kickstart their community's T-bed strategies, this may be the program for you. So some activities you may consider under this include like governance, partnership building, community planning for regional T-bed strategies, feasibility studies, community needs assessment, impact analyses, partnership, really focusing on building those partners to get a comprehensive strategy off the ground and start implementing. Now we're going to move over to the capital challenge. So the capital challenge is really focused on addressing barriers entrepreneurs face and gaining access to equity-based capital. We know that entrepreneurs, one of the biggest challenges they face is access to capital to keep their businesses up and running. So this program is specifically designed to focus on trying to address those barriers. Again, check our website. We have a plethora of different examples over the past 9 years of folks who've been doing this work, but we've often seen programming around forming new investment funds, investor recruitment and investor education, or really expanding existing investment funds. One very, very important detail about the capital challenge here is that you cannot use funding to capitalize a fund. So what can you use funding for? You can use funding to help support operations, to fund the operational aspects of the fund, but you cannot use the funds to invest directly into a startup. So very important distinction there. Under the capital challenge, we have 2 funding tiers. This may seem familiar. It does mirror the venture challenges, build and scale. So we have form and deploy. So under capital challenge form, you can request up to $400,000 of federal share over a 3-year period of performance. Again, focused on really piloting a new model or implementing a solution that may not be as mature. The second one, deploy, is funding level is $400,000 to $750,000 over the same 3-year period of performance. And again, this is really about scaling an existing proven model or program or expanding it. I'm showing you this slide again. I know that was a lot of different names thrown out there. So hopefully this summarizes it well. So under Build the Scale, we have $50 million between the venture and capital challenge. And under each challenge, we have various tiers to, again, focus on meeting communities where they need it. So now let's dive into the application process. So before you even get started, before you open an account, before you open the application, you will need at least 2 things. 1, you need to locate your organization's UEI, your Uniform Entity Identifier Number. You will need that to register in order to create an account to apply. Second, please make sure your organization is registered and up to date with their registration in SAM.gov. This could take a couple weeks for this to process, so please do this as soon as possible. First thing you should do. Next, once you have both of those things, you're now ready to make an account. We're excited at EDA to say we have a brand new application platform called Edge. And Edge, this is the website. If you haven't already, please bookmark it. All of our open funding opportunities are listed there, so you can read the NOFOs and apply through the system. So all EDA funding will now be posted on Edge as well, in addition to grants.gov. So if anyone's applied in the past or you're a returning grantee, this will look different from your past application experiences. When you're in Edge, you need to create an account, and then you can start getting started on your application and fill it out. Make sure you submit your application by July 28th. We will not accept late applications. What's in the application? So once you're in Edge, there's a number of forms and places to upload forms that you will see. The first form will look familiar if you've ever applied for federal funding. The SF-424 is your application for federal assistance. This is basic contact information, service area, that sort of thing. Separately from that, we have a spot for you to upload a list of what project areas are being served under your project, what's the region you're serving, and attaching your FIPS codes. We do have some templates. When you're in Edge on the right, there's a side that says resources. And if you click on that, it will take you to a link and you can see all of the forms that you might need and all of the optional templates. So we do have an optional template for the project area and FIPS code. You do not have to use it, but we encourage you to upload a document that will highlight your project area. Next is the SF-424A, which is general budget information. So this is your overview of your budget, your cost categories, and your match. Next, you will be required to upload a copy of a CD 511, which is a certification regarding lobbying, attesting to your lobbying status as an organization. Additional forms. So again, these may not be required for all applicants. So it's up to you to know if your organization does need to comply with these things. The first is SPOC, aka the single point of contact, state point of contact, which is subject to Executive Order 12372. If your state is on what we call the SPOC list, if your state requires compliance with Executive Order 12372, then you need to upload proof that you have been in compliance with that. So please check and see if your state is on the list and that your state requires this. Second, if you are a non-public entity, so back to our eligibility slide, that's nonprofits, institutions of higher education that are not public entities, federal labs, et cetera. If you are a non-public entity, you are required to upload additional organizational documentation so we can verify your eligibility status. So please upload a certificate of good standing, your articles of incorporation, and your organization bylaws. If you are including in your budget indirect cost, that is not the de minimis. You are allowed to use the de minimis rate of 10%, but if you have a negotiated indirect cost agreement, also known as a NICRA, you will need to upload your non-expired copy here. There is an upload button for that, so please include that. If you are using the de minimis rate, you do not need to do this. And then finally on this list, if your organization has lobbying activities, you will need to fill out the SFLLL and upload and attach that. Even if you don't think you have lobbying activities, I still think it's worth reading this form and confirming that you do not need it. Next, you will be required to upload a project narrative. So what goes into your project narrative? Please read the notice of funding opportunity. There's a lot more description here, but you have 10 pages to upload to tell us about your project, which includes a quick executive summary. What is the vision, mission, goals, and roles for your program that you would like us to fund? What existing ecosystem resources and assets does your community already have that you're going to leverage? What are your proposed solutions after identifying a gap in the proposal or in your community that you're trying to solve for with this funding? What partnerships will help you get them there? What are the goals and outcomes expected from this program? What is your plan to sustain the program after federal funding is done? And we ask you to include a one-page scope of work with your milestones of how you're going to get this program done in the allotted period of performance. Here's some quick tips from 9 years of this program that we've come up with. So a good project narrative should be clear and concise. We don't want to make assumptions about what you're trying to say, so please make sure it's very clear and concise about what you are trying to do. Make sure you're identifying a defined gap and you're proposing a feasible strategy to address it. We want very clearly to understand what the problem is and what your solution is. Make sure we understand how you are leveraging partnerships. We're going to be looking for those key milestones. you're going to be looking for metrics and proof of the long-term impact. And then, of course, identifying a clear and achievable scope of work. Separately, you'll also be asked to submit a budget narrative and staffing plan with an itemized breakdown by year. So what that looks like is this is your opportunity to kind of explain your budget. Your budget should definitely align with your scope of work. The cost categories in it should correspond with the SF424A and the SF424. It should include a staffing plan with key personnel and have, again, show us what your indirect costs are. We do have an optional budget template. It is in Excel. You don't have to use it. You don't have to submit it in Excel. You can submit it in Word or whatever program you want that's readable. However, I do want to know if you are submitting in Excel, don't let that limit you. Those boxes expand. Feel free to write more than one sentence to really make sure that we understand what's going into your budget so that we understand that your budget is going to support your overall goals. So some key guidance to watch out for, make sure you're looking out for unallowable costs, that you do not include unallowable costs. We've talked extensively about making sure that you're not giving money as a straight pass through to entrepreneurs or startup companies directly, but make sure there are other unallowable costs as well. So check out Uniform Guidance 2 CFR 200 subpart E. If you Google that, it should pop up, and that's the official language on guidance from federal allowability of funding. Second, make sure to watch out for budget misalignment with the rest of the application. We're really looking for a strong budget narrative and staffing plan that's going to support and show the feasibility and the planning that you've put into your solution for your region's challenges. So make sure that it is consistent with everything else in your application. Next, matching share commitment letters. As I've noted multiple times, we do have the Build to Scale program does have a 1-to-1 match requirement. So again, every $1 of EDA funding you request, you also need to provide $1 in non-federal matching share. And we'll look forward to reading that in your budget and how you broke that down. But in addition to how it is listed on the 3 different budget forms we just talked about, one of them, you should also make sure to include letters. So we're looking for that backup documentation to prove that those entities are interested in providing matching share. So the letter, whether it's coming from a third party or an applicant, you still need a letter. It should be signed by somebody with signatory authority. The letter should include whether the contribution is cash or in kind. It should include a valuation and a description, particularly for any in-kind contributions. So for example, if somebody is providing in-kind staff time, we want to know whose staff time it is and the rate at which they are giving it and the total expected over the course of the 3 years or the period of performance. We want to know the source for the contribution. Again, it needs to be signed by somebody who has signatory authority on behalf of that organization. And the letter should state that they verify that the match, again, whether cash or in kind, is committed to the project, will be available as needed for the project, and is neither conditioned nor encumbered so that it can't be used. So we are looking for those kind of 3 statements in the letter as well to confirm that this is a legitimate source of matching share. I do want to note, and please read the NOFO, which has more detail on this. If there is a third party entity that would like to eventually apply with your organization or is trying to be a contractor under this grant, they cannot contribute to, they cannot be a provider of matching share. If they are and please look up in the NOFO the definition of contractor, which is different from a subrecipient. If they are a contractor under this grant or are looking to become a contractor under this grant, they cannot provide matching share. They could do one or the other. You can either be a contractor or you can provide matching share if that's where you fit. If you're a subrecipient, you can do both. If you're an applicant, you could do both, but if you are trying to be a contractor on the grant, you cannot provide matching share. So please read the fine print on that in the NOFO. Next, I noted earlier that public and non-public entities might have slightly different checklists. I do want to note in the notice of funding opportunity in the appendix, there are 2 separate checklists. Make sure you're looking at the right one so you have the full list of what is required for your entity type. If you are a non-public entity, if you are higher education, institution of higher education, if you are a nonprofit, if you're a federal lab, so-and-so, you are required to submit a letter of local or state government support. What does that mean? So a letter of support, they don't have to contribute money. They just need to say that they, acknowledge and support your project and your application. The letter must come from a state or a political subdivision of a state, so a county, city, municipality, etc. While you are definitely allowed to include letters from other types of government or quasi-governmental entities in order to meet this particular requirement, it does need to come from a state or a political subdivision of a state. If you submit a letter from other entities, such as U.S. Congress, economic development districts, councils of government, chambers of commerce, those will be read, they'll be evaluating your application, but they will not meet this requirement. So this is a very specific requirement that needs to be met. Now that we finished our application, we've submitted it. Now you want to know what you're going to be scored on. Well, we're going to tell you. If you read the notice of funding opportunity, we have the exact wording that that will be used for merit review and how your application will be evaluated. So I encourage you to heavily read through that one a few times and make sure that you feel like you feel good about how that is covered in your project narrative and in your budget narrative. But separately, the really quick summary of that is this will be weighted unequally, and here we'll be looking at how your application is leveraging ecosystem resources and assets that already exist in your community, how your proposed solution and implementation plan will be effective. Does your organization and team have the capacity and feasibility to execute said proposed solution and implementation plan? What is the likelihood of growing innovation economies? Is this project really going to help grow an innovation economy? What are the continued effects? So what is the lasting impact, if you will, after the program is ended that you expect? What does the sustainability look like there? And then finally, how is your program addressing this in an equitable way? How is your implementation plan taking equity into effect in its process? A quick highlight of some common application mistakes. The first one is undermatching. As I've said multiple times, we have a one-to-one match requirement. So if you do not meet your one-to-one match requirement, you may be ineligible for the funding because it is required. Second, missing documentation. Again, we have 2 checklists at the end of the notice of funding opportunity. They're also on the EDA website on the Build to Scale page. Please use these, help make sure you're not forgetting anything in your system that you're required based on your entity type. Third, ineligible entities. If you are not an eligible entity, unfortunately, we cannot give you funding for this grant. So make sure you check that. So if you are a startup, if you are a for-profit small business, unfortunately, you are not eligible for this funding at this time. So please make sure you read the eligibility requirements. And finally, another common application mistake we see are making sure that you are not structuring your program as direct pass-through to companies or entrepreneurs. As I've said multiple times, that is not allowed. That is not a use of allowable funding. So if that's what your program is doing, that's going to be an issue when it comes to scoring and selection. Competition timeline. So June 1st, we announced the Build to Scale program. Applications are due July 28th, 2023. This is a Friday. They are due at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. We will not accept anything after that. If you submit it at 12:01, we will not accept your application. It will be time stamped in the system. So please make sure that you submit it early to avoid any mishaps. We expect to make award announcements in fall of 2023, and we expect those selected for funding to begin their work on November 1st to be the beginning of the period of performance. If you have any questions, please check out our website at eda.gov for the Build to Scale page. In particular, we have FAQs that we are updating regularly. And if you can't find the answer there, you can always reach us at oie@eda.gov. Thanks for your time.